All right, this is my second video for the trig equations involving more than one function, lab 3 for my pre-calculus class. So let's continue on. Here's number 6. Remember, all these are in degrees. I'm looking for all my angles from 0 to 360 that make this equation true. So I look at this and say, oh dear, I have two trig functions. I have sine and then I have cosine squared. I always gravitate towards the squared one to see what I can use. So I look at my identity paper, that's that yellow paper in front, and I want to solve for cosine squared. So I'm going to move sine squared over there. So I know that cosine squared theta equals 1 minus sine squared. So that makes me happy because in that spot I can put 1 minus sine squared. So let's go back. I got 1 minus sine squared theta plus sine theta. And I'm going to move the 1 over because I know I have to eventually because I see it's a quadratic. And then I come over here and say, oh, I have 1 minus 1. Thanks for playing. So now I have negative sine squared theta plus sine theta equals 0. Again, when I just have 2, not 3, and I see it's a quadratic, I always go to factor. So I'm going to factor out a negative sine theta because I can. When I do, this divided by this gives me a regular sine theta here. And sine divided by negative sine is negative 1 equals 0. So watch your signs here. If I factor out a negative, I'm dividing them both, changes their signs, make my big T. So I have negative sine theta equals 0. Divide by negative 1, sine theta equals 0. That's one of my equations. Over here, I have sine theta minus 1 equals 0, sine theta equals 1. So now I have my two trig equations. So I'm going to come here. I have to do inverse sine of 0. And the one thing I want you to remember is when you draw your picture, okay, I know when sine or cosine are 0, I know sine, I know all these here. I know this is 0, 1, and I know this is 0, negative 1. Okay, so that's my sine is 1 and negative 1. But I do know here this is 1, 0 and negative 1, 0. When I put in my calculator, I only am going to get 0 degrees. But remember, you have 0 degrees. Sine is also 0 over here at 180 and then back over at 360. For this one little piece, I have 0 degrees as an answer, 180 degrees as an answer, and so is 360. 0 and 360 are the same. I just want to let you know that you have to check all the quadrants when you're looking at that. The other equation I'm doing is inverse sine of 1. Now 1, okay, so here's this one right here, and I see that it's 1. I only see here that sine is only 1 here because it will give you 90 degrees, okay? And that's going to be it because sine isn't 1 anywhere else. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 angles that make this one work. So that was kind of fun. All right, let's look at number 7. I have tangent theta equals 3 cotangent theta. Again, I have two different trig functions. I do know because I know that cotangent is the same as 1 over tangent. So I can write it like this. Tangent theta equals 3 times, and I know cotangent is 1 over tangent theta, okay? So you can say, oh, tangent theta is 3 over tangent theta. You're like, okay, what do I do with that? Well, let's just cross multiply or multiply both sides by tan theta. So I have tangent squared theta equals 3. Well, that's nice, but now I have to take the square root and square root. And don't forget, when you take the square root, you have plus and minus. So I have tangent theta equals a positive radical 3, and I have tangent theta equals a negative radical 3. Now, the cool thing about this is I'm using the same value, so I'm actually going to kind of go all the way around. So here's my picture. I see that tangent's positive, and tangent is positive in quadrants 1 and 3, because it's like a slope, and it's negative in quadrants 2 and 4. So I'm kind of going to go all the way around with the same value. So when I put in inverse tan of radical 3, which this should sound familiar to you because we memorized the table, you should get 60 degrees. Now watch. If this is 60 degrees here, when I come over here, 180 plus 60 is going to be 240 degrees. That's great. Well, this is the negative of the same value, so it's still 60. I'm going to do 180 minus 60. So now I have 120 here. And then 360 minus the 60 degrees is going to give us 300. So you kind of went all the way around. So my answer to this one is going to be, ready? 60, 120 degrees. I'm coming around here, 240 degrees, and 300. And remember, I got the 120 degrees and the 300 degrees here from the negative part of this, and the positive part, I got the 60 and the 120. So that's cool. That was kind of cool. Once you found one of them, you could go all the way around and find all of the angles with the same reference angle of 60. All right, let's try 8. 2 sine theta equals cosecant. I don't see any squared. Sine is, I consider my building block, so I said, can I write cosecant another way? And I know it's 1 over sine theta. Cross multiply, I have 2 sine squared theta equals 1. And I'm going to move the 1 over there. I have, well, you don't really need to move the 1 over there if you don't want. We can actually leave it here and divide by 2. That's fine if you want to do that. Or you can move it over and do the quadratic formula. So I have sine squared theta equals 1/2. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget you have to do positive and negative. So I have sine theta is positive radical 1/2. And then I have sine theta is negative radical 1/2. Now again, this is kind of like the one we just did. Once I find one of them, I can go all the way around. So let's draw the picture. I know sine is positive in quadrants 1 and 2 because it's my y value, and it's negative in quadrants 3 and 4. Okay? When I do inverse sine right here of radical 1/2, what you're going to get is 45 degrees. You're like, oh, and that's the same as radical 2 over 2. It just looks a little bit different. So I know this is 45 degrees. 180 minus 45 degrees is going to give you 135 degrees. So that goes with the positive. I don't need to put this in because I already have it. So my reference angle is still 45. I'm now going to come down here in the third quadrant and say 180 plus 45. That's 225 degrees. So that's right here. And then 360 minus 45 is going to give you 315. Okay, so now I have all 4 angles again, which is kind of cool. So I have 45 degrees is the first one, 135 is the second one, 225 degrees is the third one, 315 degrees is the fourth angle that all work to make this equation equal or work. Okay, we're solving it. Number 9, okay, again, a cosine is my building block, so I'm going to look at secant. I can write as 1 over cosine. Then I can cross multiply. So now I know cosine squared of theta equals 1. Take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. So I have cosine of theta equals 1 and cosine of theta equals negative 1. So those are my 2 equations. So this one actually is kind of simpler because I know that these are on the quadrants. So let's write all this. This is 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. And when I do this, if you hit inverse cosine of 1, okay, you're going to get 0 degrees, which is true, but it's only going to give you that. So you check them all. Is cosine 1 anywhere else? No, not unless it's 360. So 360 degrees is the same as 0. So there's 2 angles for that one. Then I'm going to do inverse cosine of negative 1. When I do that, I get 180 degrees. And isn't that going to be right over here? And cosine is negative 1 nowhere else, so I only have 3 angles. I have 0 degrees, 180 degrees, and I come back to 360. So there's only 3 angles that make this work. I'm going to stop this video and start at number 10. So there you go on this one so far.